Thank you so much for watching and listening. Oh my goodness, I totally want you to subscribe. It's a great channel. Really, really good content, fun jokes, great interviews. Here's your joke for today. Why do bees have sticky hair? Because they use honeycombs. I know, you're like, oh my gosh. I know, but it's a little bit of grown, and then we get to the amazing content. We're going to wrap up our series, Journeys with Jesus. We've been talking about it for this month, and walking with Jesus, sailing with Jesus, riding with Jesus. And then I want us to think about, this is a little bit of a interesting thing to think about. When Jesus walked on the earth, sailed on the Sea of Galilee, rode on the donkey. When Jesus traveled, when he lived here, he always had people. So in the journeys with Jesus, you will always find people with Jesus on that journey. The only place where you don't see Jesus with people is when he's in the Judean wilderness at the very beginning and he's tempted by Satan for 40 days and 40 nights. After that, it's people. Because Jesus came for people. Seek and save that which is lost. Jesus came to connect, to redeem, to, I think in some ways to reprimand, to correct, to reconcile people. For God so loved the world, people, that he sent Jesus, his only begotten Son. Because God loves, and because God is love, people are the recipients of that love. God loves people, God loves you. So when Jesus came and he traveled on the earth, he always had people around him. The only time you see him, again, Judean wilderness, and on occasion he would go up on the mountain to pray by himself, but that was unusual and it wasn't necessarily his normal. The normal always included people. So the people that he traveled with included, number one, his family. Do you realize, and we don't know much about Joseph. He kind of falls off the planet. We don't hear much about him in the Bible, for sure. But his mom traveled with him and his half-brothers, half-sisters. So they traveled with Jesus. They went with Jesus. And sometimes they liked him and sometimes they were frustrated with him. But they traveled with Jesus no matter what. Also people who traveled with Jesus. Spectators. There's a lot of people who wanted to see, who is this guy? What's he all about? All of the things he's doing. I'm just here as a spectator. I want to observe what he's doing. And then you also have what I call recipients. People who got things from Jesus. Free lunch, miracles, supernatural healings, the lepers were cleansed. I mean, all kinds of recipients, all kinds of things that people got from Jesus. Healing from disease, healing from a fever. And then you also had people traveling with Jesus who were his disciples, closest followers. Among those disciples, we know Peter, James, and John were probably his closest buddies. You also had religious people, controversial people. Religious people who traveled and went with Jesus, Pharisees, Sadducees, invited Jesus to come over, have dinner, religious lawyers, Jewish lawyers. So you always had people. And in the midst of people, you have people that followed Jesus, and sometimes you had a whole crowd of people that followed him because they thought he was amazing and incredible. But at one point, he says things that they don't understand, that seem disagreeable to them. And at one point, a bunch of Jesus followers drop off. And you read about this in John 6, verse 66. And it says a whole bunch, they listened to what Jesus was saying, and when they heard him, they didn't understand. And it was curious to them, frustrated them, and controversial for them. And so they decided to leave. And so several of Jesus' followers left, and Jesus turns to his 12 disciples and he's like, hey, are you guys going to leave too? And I like what Peter says to him, Lord, to whom should we go? You have the words of life. And so when we journey with Jesus, maybe we can find ourselves as one of these individuals, one of these groups, these pockets. Maybe we're family with Jesus and we see him kind of just common. He's the dude that we grew up with. He's not that big a deal, and we just kind of dismiss him. And there's so much familiarity that familiarity breeds contempt. And they didn't really accept him for who he was. And maybe we've grown up. You've grown up in church and you've heard about Jesus all your life, and you're like, oh yeah, it's just Jesus. But let's be careful that if we're family, that we don't just kind of dismiss Jesus as everyday, common, regular dude. Maybe we're the controversial. Maybe we don't understand what he's saying or doing in our lives, and maybe we get frustrated and we walk away. We're angry, we're hurt, we're bitter, something happens. We're like, Jesus, what's going on here? Maybe we're the disciples, and we're like, yeah, I full on believe. I don't understand everything, but I believe. I choose to believe. Maybe we're the spectators. Maybe we're the recipients. Maybe we watch from a distance. And the people that are in your life, I think all of us at various places and times are one combination of these groups, these pockets. Hopefully we're not the religious leaders too often or too long. I think that Jesus, I love what Jesus does with the religious leaders, because he's grilling them all the time. And I think he's grilling them because of his love, that he wants them to get out of their quagmire and really be authentic and genuine in their connection with Christ. So I just encourage you that as we walk with Jesus, do journeys with Jesus, sailing and riding, that people around us, have various interactions, engagements, and connections with Jesus, but also who are we as we journey with Jesus? And maybe at the end of the day, we're just flat out in love with him because he loves us more than anybody else, more authentically, more genuinely, more fully, more really than anybody. And I find this to be true, that no matter who's in our life, no matter how great they are or not, that nobody sustains and holds and keeps us better or more than Jesus. So let's continue to stay in our life journey with Jesus. No matter what, no matter who's around, no matter what's happening, let's keep our life in sync and cadence as we journey with Jesus. Thank you so much for watching, listening. Of course, hit the notification bell right there. Keep you posted on content that we put up, new content. And here's your question to answer now in the comments. What area in your life is in need of Jesus most? What area in your life needs Jesus the most? You're like, well, all of it. Pick an area. You're like, why? Because I want you to zero in on that. Because when you're specific and you're like, Jesus, I really need you in this area, then I think it helps you to watch and see Jesus. He begins to show up and you're like, oh, I didn't expect that. So thanks again for watching, listening, and stay posted, because next week we're going to start a new series. Thanks again.